Good morning, Dragon Slayers. I'm delighted to have with us today an old friend and a rather heroic man in his own right, uh, Jeffrey Hoyt. Jeffrey's journey is rather unique, and I'll allow him to introduce himself now. Jeff, uh, first of all, how did we come to meet each other?
I was doing litigation against the Dow Chemical Company when I was a trial attorney back in the 80s, actually, and we needed a expert witness in the field of psychiatry, and we looked and searched for various psychiatrists, and we found your reputation preceded you, and we decided to use you, and we hit it off.
And that began a long-term partnership and friendship. Uh, one of the first questions I'd like to inquire about is it's very difficult in the competitive legal world to become successful. What was the magic for you? How were you able to achieve what you've achieved?
Well, I think in part because I am a little bit obsessive compulsive in a good way. For the most part, at least with the practice of law. It fit me well there. And I had this attention to detail and desire to sort of change the world, taught to me by my late mother, Helen Stewart. And I was able to take that obsessiveness and whatever you want to call it, and desire to change the world into put them into one format and practice law and do some good.
Well, it sounds like you did a lot of good because I was involved in several of your cases, I believe, and you were successful. When did you decide enough? I'd like to go on and do something else.
Probably after about 30 years of practice. So it takes it up to about the year, I'd say 2009, 2000. I think, let's say I started practicing in 1980. So probably about 2010, I decided I'd had enough and 30 years was plenty. And we I had the ability at that point to retire and leave it to a very good partner I had at the time, Peter Weatherall and my brother Stuart. Partners, and I was able to leave the practice and just be of counsel.
Excellent. But you did something that's important for many of us that have worked in professions. You developed a collegial relationship with your partners so that what you had established could continue.
Yeah, I had a very good relationship with my partners and also the associates in our law firm that we hired, and we established a good practice of product liability cases against large corporations that make defective products, at least certain defective products, including Wyeth and Dow Chemical and Pfizer. They make a lot of good products, but they make some bad ones too.
We later connected when you invited me to a performance of your then garage band. I believe it was called Bad Neighbors, which is a wonderful name for a garage band. And how did that come about?
Well, the reputation for bad neighbors became the name came from the fact that we practiced in a garage, and some of the neighbors complained about the noise from the garage, and so we decided to call ourselves the Bad Neighbors, and that's how that came about. And it's sort of an alternative.
It's a bit of genius, though. Anybody who knows anything about garage bands is perfect.
Well, yeah, I think it was Lawson Fox. He was working for KTV, and he's the general manager of KTV, and he's our bass player and vocalist at that time, and he coined the name, and we thought it was pretty good.
And then you morphed into various uh, Beatle tribute bands, and that you're now Beatles Flashback, right?
Well, before Bad Neighbors, there was the Breeze Brothers with John Elkins and myself and two other people, and I actually took a leave of absence from my law practice back in the '80s. This is before the Bad Neighbors to go touring with them all over the state. Um, and then I came back to my law practice, and then later I joined the Bad Neighbors, and then after the Bad Neighbors, there was a group called the Smokin' Bulldogs, and that was a group that this is after I retired from the practice of law, and we had a lot of fun and a lot of different players in that band. And we did originals, and we did Beatles, and we did classic rock. So we had the three primary genres there involved.
And then you morphed into Beatles flashback ultimately.
When the Smoking Bulldogs, and then at that same time, a gentleman by the name of Jeff Seamus from wine country in California, his he moved to Reno and he saw us. He saw the Smoking Bulldogs play at the Great Basin Brewing Company, and he was in the audience. And he came up and talked to me, and that was about 10 years ago. And we've been playing as the Beatles flashback and practicing ever since, and just having a blast playing Beatles music. I still do the originals with Tom Gordon of Emarage Studios, and I love the original stuff, but I like the Beatles too a lot.
But your repertoire, even as Beatles flashback, includes other music, does it not?
No, we play exclusively Beatles songs, nothing else, just Beatles songs, and we practice hard to get the harmonies and all of the component parts right, and it comes out fairly decently, I'd say.
So it's just pure Beatles, if you want. I have witnessed several of your performances, and they're incredible. And Jeff is a community legend. He will occasionally play about 4 times a year for free in the parks. Don't you release that?
Well, we've done some charity concerts, but um, I'd say we play for free or at a reduced rate for the charity concerts. We've done a lot of that, but mostly we play in Reno and Truckee. We played Bartley Ranch and Hot August Nights, the Rib Cook-Off, Collin Ranch, where I think we saw you a few times. And then in Truckee, we play the parks in Truckee and the little amphitheaters. And we just finished a concert in Carson City in February at the Brewery Arts Center, which is a converted Catholic church. And that was for a charity event. And so we play it all over.
For those who aspire to be a cover band, I am impressed knowing you that you don't take this casually. You spend a lot of time practicing.
Well, the leader of our band, who is also named Jeff, also shares my drive and my compulsion to get the songs right. And so I think the combination of Jeff Seamus, the band leader, and myself, I guess I'd say I'm the vice president of the band or something like that. We got together and he's a slave driver, let's put it that way, and I support him in that sense.
Good. How often do you practice?
Well, during the summer concert season, we practice maybe once every week, once every 2 weeks, sometimes more, depending on right before the gig that's coming up. And we practice acoustic practices where we just sit around with acoustic guitars and practice on the vocals. Then we practice as a full band with all the electric and the amplifiers and the effects and monitors, and that's a different kind of practice. So we practice both ways.
Have you made recordings?
If you go to BeatlesFlashback.com, you'll see lots of recordings from various concerts in Reno and Virginia City and Carson City and wine country in California and Truckee. And so those are the recordings that are posted. I've made recordings with the band called Jeff and Friends, which is the band that does the original. We're just sort of a compilation of musicians in the Reno area that get together and do some originals once in a while.
How do you handle the issue of royalties?
Well, I'd rather not comment on the issue of royalties. That has not come up yet in our band playing at the various venues. With original songs, that's not an issue at all. But with the Beatles flashback, we pretty much do it like every other tribute band, which is really just to play your music and see what happens.
Well, my speculation is that there are probably multiple Beatle tribute bands in the world. Uh,
There are, I think we're the only one that we know of in northern Nevada and Northern California, but the band Rain actually originated in Reno, and Rain is a national, very well known Beatles tribute band. We played with them recently at a concert at the Sands Casino, whatever that location. They have a location there, a new concert venue. We played with them and some other Beatles tribute bands from across the whole world, the whole nation. Let's put it that way, not the whole world.
oh, that must have been phenomenal.
It was such an experience because there was a John Lennon tribute band. There was a George Harrison tribute band. There was the fellows from Rain. There was Beatles Flashback, our band, and then there was some other entertainers in there as well. It was quite a honor to be chosen to play with them or with members of Rain. Let's put it that way. And at the end, we all got up together. And there was like sang our songs, and it was a lot of fun. There was like 25 of us.
25. I can imagine when you played Sergeant Pepper's, it must have been something else.
It was crazy. It was crazy, but it was fun. It's pure. I get such a joy playing the music and especially hitting the harmonies correctly. The Beatles were an amazing group. I saw them live one time when I was 14 years old, and it inspired me greatly.
Hmm. You and Phil
Yes, me and
Collins.
Phil Collins and the Eagles and the Birds and so many groups that saw. I don't put myself on the same level as Phil Collins, by the way, but or the Birds, but so many groups saw the Beatles or saw their movies or saw whatever and decided to form a group at that time, and they were an inspiration to.
Well, my bit of trivia regarding Phil Collins is when they filmed A Hard Day's Night, they recruited a bunch of extras. And there was this kid that they recruited who you can see in the film following the Beatles in a rush, as many people have. And that kid became Phil Collins.
If somebody wants to dive really, go ahead. One more thing I'd like to say about the Beatles is that Peter Jackson, the great film director, recently did a documentary on the Beatles, and it's about 6 hours long, and it's the number one documentary on rated on Rotten Tomatoes and YouTube and other places. But anyway, it's just such a wonderful thing to watch. He went into this vault and he got all these films and he put this together, and it's just the most wonderful documentary. It's called Get Back. And if anybody gets a chance, it's on the Disney Plus channel to watch that. It really gives you some insight into just how brilliant these musicians were coming into the studio and writing a song on the spot. I mean, it was just an amazing thing to watch.
I believe there's a book out that I read called Tune In, which gives a history of the Beatles, which is a delightful piece. I have to say personally, I was very much into the Beatles, having come back from the Peace Corps and discovering this group. And I can recall uh, following them very closely. I can recall a friend of mine who was equally enthused. We would, and these were, by that time we were grown men. We were in our psychiatric residency program at Stanford, and my buddy would wait eagerly for the next vinyl Beatles record to come out and hang out. And in those days, I think cannabis was just coming into being in terms of penetrating virtually everywhere. And I am a very cautious person when it comes to using substances. But I do remember how pleasant it was to listen to a fresh Beatle band slightly high on cannabis. I wouldn't recommend that to everybody, but it worked out. Subsequently, I discovered that cannabis impacted my cognition the next day, and being also somewhat obsessive compulsive and perfectionistic, I didn't like that feeling. But listening to Sergeant Pepper's or listening to some of the A Day in the Life for the first time, was just
Yeah, it was
awesome.
sort of a spiritual experience almost, the way the music would come in and you'd just say, "Oh my God," "Wow," so I remember those days.
Conversely, when the band split, it was really something that hit me. I really mourned that.
I think a lot of people did. I think millions of people did. But their individual careers were quite nice too. So, plus we have the memories. We have the memories of their 7 years of albums together from 1963 up through 1971. Let It Be was the last album that they released. And but right now, when we play concerts, I mean, we just played a sold out show at the Brewery Arts Center, Carson City, and we play concerts, and there's young people and old people alike, and the young people seem to know all the words to the Beatles songs, just like the old people do. So that's kind of an interesting phenomena that would survive so long, passed down through generations.
Well, I notice in the case of my own kids, and I'm sure true with your kids, that when you're a young parent and you're playing music, uh, and the kids listen to it, they connect to it. For example, in my case, just growing up, my family was musically inclined, and I grew up on listening to Gershwin and Rogers and others of that generation. All of that music, kind of the classic uh, music of the 30s and 40s. Okay, back to you. So it's been almost a quarter century that you have morphed from, not quite, but I guess I should, let me say that differently. Did you do music 12 years, but before that, were you not playing music, or was it, so it was overlapping your music, your legal career, correct?
Well, yeah, there was some overlap there with the first band we formed, which is Breeze Brothers Band. And so, yes, when I actually took a leave of absence from my law practice, I was working for Peter Echeverria and Al Osborne, a law firm at that time, and I wanted to play music, and they wanted me to stay and practice law. Finally, my boss asked, "Is there a law library in Winnemucca or Jackpot or Elko or all these places we were?" I said, "Yeah, I think there's a law library in Elko and Winnemucca." And he said, "Well, you just stay with the firm and we'll just call you a part timer." So I still practiced law and played music at the same time.
Okay, when was that?
Probably 1982, 83, 84 in that vicinity, 80, right in that particular time.
So it's been 82, 83, 84.
That's when the Breeze Brothers, the first band I was in.
So we're talking about a 40-year career.
Well, I guess you are. Yeah, that's right. 40 years from playing music. Probably I started playing 1980 and then left the practice of law full time in 1982 for a leave of absence for about a year or so. And then so 19, yeah, that's about right. But I didn't. After a while, I quit playing music in 1983 and just focused on the rather large litigations I was involved in then. I had no time for music at that time. I just had to practice law.
Well, let's look at the antecedents. Did you play as a kid?
Yeah, I've been playing music since I was probably 13 years old. 13, just, with my guitar and things like that.
So this is something, a discipline that you cultivated over time.
Yes, I always had a dream of playing music ever since I was a kid. And and I had a dream to do that. And so I pursued it later in life and enjoyed it and still enjoy it.
Obviously. So, but what I think is fascinating is that, we have identities as friends, as partners, as husbands, wives, whatever, but your identity as an attorney was core to you. But this was, at this point, has supplanted that. You are a musician and a composer now.
I'm a father, a husband, and a musician, and probably in close to that order. I mean, I have 5 children that love music. By the way, they all know all the Beatles songs, and my wife Sally, she loves music too, and I'm just very happy with my family, but music has always been a part of my life. You're correct in that regard, and my faith in God.
Good. Okay. And I would encourage our listeners to access some of your own compositions. Uh, you are a unique songwriter, and I believe that at least the two songs that I've listened to, I think had some real potential commercial appeal.
I've been told that. I think that's nice to hear, and we're hoping to do that someday. Just all in due time. Jeff and Friends is the name of the website for originals. GEOFFAND Friends.com. You can also look for Jeff and Friends and Key to Life on YouTube, as well as Facebook. And if you want to just hear some of the originals, the best thing to do is just tune into Jeff and Friends and start with Key to Life. We have a new one coming out that's already out, but we just haven't put it out on the Spotify and places like that yet.
Well, you auditioned one with me called When Pigs Fly, which I thought was delightful.
Yeah, it's a country song.
Is that on the website?
That's on. No, it's not on the website yet, but it'll be there when I get together with Tom Gordon, the record producer. I'll put it there. We'll put it there.
Well, Jeff, thank you for sharing your story with us and sharing time with us. I encourage our listeners to attempt to access your websites. You will not be disappointed. And if you haven't already, pick up our book, Dragon Slaying. Be well until next time. Thank you.